He followed every rule, not just some of them, but all of them. He worked hard, stayed loyal, kept his head down, and never complained. He built something and held it together when it started to fall apart, and then he held it together once more. He did exactly what he was supposed to do, yet he ended up with nothing. Now, the winter is coming. The worst part is that he saw it happening and was powerless to stop it. He watched his marriage go. He watched his friendships thin out after the divorce. He watched the weekends get quieter, and the months get quieter after that. He handled all of it the way he handles everything, without making it anyone else's problem and without saying what it actually cost. That is not a character flaw. That is a generation. He did not choose the rules. He absorbed them. That is how it works when you are young. You do not sit down and decide what kind of man to become. You pick it up from the air around you, from the way your father moved through the world, and from what got rewarded and what got punished. The instructions were clear. Work hard, be reliable, and do not complain. Provide for the family, for the household, and for the people who depend on you. In return, the system was supposed to take care of you, providing a house, stability, and a place in the world, with someone at the table when you come home. He is Gen X, born somewhere between 1965 and 1980. He grew up in the era of Reagan and Thatcher, of latchkey afternoons and fathers who worked 60 hours a week and did not talk about it because that was just what men did. His parents had lived through real hardship, the kind that makes delayed gratification feel not like discipline but like gravity. You put in, and eventually you get out. Every institution around him confirmed it, so he internalized it young. Do not be soft. Do not show too much. Be the guy who handles it. He got genuinely good at that. So good that by the time he was in his 30s, he had almost forgotten there was another way to be. He married, or tried to, built a career, a home, and something that resembled a life. He showed up every day for years without asking for recognition. He just kept working, because that is what you do. And eventually, the thing he had been building toward was supposed to be there. For a while, it seemed like it might be. There is something that does not get said clearly enough about this generation. Gen X men did not live through one economic crisis. They lived through 8 of them, and each one hit at a different life stage. Each one was absorbed quietly because showing that it was too much was never something they were built to do. From 1969 to 1975, a severe recession and the OPEC oil embargo occurred during early childhood for the oldest Gen Xers. In 1980, there was a brief but sharp 6-month recession caused by high inflation and rising interest rates. In 1987, the crash happened. He was a teenager picking up the anxiety from the adults around him without understanding it. In 1991, another recession hit, just as he was trying to start a career. In 2001, the dot-com collapse occurred, now with a mortgage and maybe a young child. In 2008, the worst one hit at his peak earning age, with savings wiped and some jobs never coming back. Then came COVID-19 when he was in his late 40s or early 50s, and whatever remained of job security dissolved in about 3 weeks. 8 recessions, each one survived, and each one absorbed without complaint, because that was the deal. He handles what comes and keeps going. Here is what that accumulation does. Every time a man holds himself together on the outside, while something breaks on the inside, the gap between who he shows the world and who actually lives inside him gets a little wider. By his 50s, many Gen X men are running a version of themselves they have been maintaining for so long, they can barely remember what is underneath it. The financial reality is specific. The average Gen X man has saved around $150,000 for retirement, but the amount that actually works is somewhere between 1 and 1.5 million. Only 16% of Gen X feel they have saved enough. The average shortfall between what they expect to need and what they expect to have is $405,000, larger than millennials and larger than boomers, from a generation that worked harder and complained less than either. While 77% fear Social Security won't exist when they need it, 81% are counting on it as a primary income source. Both things are true at the same time. He worked his whole life, and the math still does not add up. This is not because he was careless, but because the ground kept moving while he kept working, and none of that was in the original agreement. The institutions betrayed him. The company he gave 20 years to downsized him at 52. The pension disappeared, replaced by a 401k he was supposed to manage himself. The safety net had holes nobody mentioned until he fell through them. The rules changed, and nobody told him. Gen X carries a divorce rate of around 36%. Most of these men married young because that was what they had observed. You build a family, you provide, and that is the structure. But the version of marriage they were raised to expect had already started shifting before they got to it. The domestic model they had been taught to look for was changing in ways that did not match the picture in their heads. So, a lot of Gen X men spent years searching for something that no longer existed in the form they had imagined. A unicorn, a partner who fit the old model, a family that looked the way it was supposed to. Most of them did not find it. After one failed marriage or after enough failed attempts to get one, many stopped trying. Not bitterly or dramatically, they just quietly decided that building a family again was not something they were going to do. For the ones who did have children, the divorce produced something specific. Most of them became holiday fathers. They were present for the birthdays, the graduations, and the scheduled weekends, but absent from the daily texture of their kids' lives. They were not there on an ordinary Tuesday, and were not part of the rhythms that are actually how children know their parents and how parents shape who their children become. They are technically fathers, but practically spectators. That is a particular kind of loss that most of these men carry without naming it. When the marriage ended, the social world went with it. She kept the friendships, or those friendships faded because they were built around the couple. She stayed connected to the community, the neighbors, and the family networks. For the man, that infrastructure evaporated. He did not build a replacement because building social infrastructure was never something he was taught to do. That was supposed to be her job. His father probably did not talk about his feelings, and his grandfather certainly did not. The men around him growing up communicated through action, through showing up, through providing, and through achieving. Emotional expression was something that happened in private, rarely, and was not mentioned afterward. He learned early what vulnerability costs. He became competent, steady, and self-contained, the guy who handles it. In the world he grew up in, that was rational. But adaptations that once worked can become problems over time. A man can gradually lose access to his own emotional states, not because the feelings disappear, but because the ability to identify them and name them gets cut off through decades of not using it. What it produces is someone who does not experience himself as lonely because he stopped checking whether he was lonely a long time ago, and who does not experience himself as depressed because he lost the language for it years back. He is just tired, busy, or fine. Cigna's 2025 data classifies 60% of Gen X as lonely, and he is almost certainly in that number, though he would never use that word. This silence, this bone-deep, lifelong habit of not saying what is actually happening, is not a side detail of what comes next. It is the mechanism that produces it. Suicide deaths in the U.S. run at roughly 4 men for every 1 woman every year in every country you look at. Men aged 40 to 64, where most Gen X men are right now, die by suicide at a rate of 27.1 per 100,000. From 1999 to 2010, that rate among men in their 50s rose by nearly 50%. In just 1 year, from 2021 to 2022, suicide deaths in the 45 to 64 age group increased by nearly 7%. In 2023, it was the fifth leading cause of death for men aged 45 to 54. The men least likely to seek help are the ones most at risk, and stoicism is the thing that keeps that door closed. Right now, he can manage. He drives himself to appointments, has a routine that gives the week a shape, and he functions. Nobody checks on him because he seems okay, and also because nobody is really checking. The question that rarely gets asked out loud is this: what happens when the things that currently work stop working? Right now, he is 50 or 55, but the question isn't what things look like today, it is what they look like at 70 or 75. When the body becomes less cooperative and the routine starts to need help, who drives him to the hospital at 3 a.m.? Who notices when he does not answer for 4 days? Who holds the full history of his medical conditions in their head? Who is his emergency contact? Who sits with him? Boomer men, the generation just ahead of him, mostly had wives who handled all of this. Appointments, medications, social calendars, emergency situations, and the thousands of small tasks that constitute a managed life. For the Gen X man who is alone, that system does not exist. He has not built anything equivalent. And most of these men have not looked directly at the fact that they need to. Researchers have a term for what is developing: elder orphan. This refers to an older adult living without a partner, without children in meaningful contact, and without a support network. Using U.S. Census data, they estimate around 22% of Americans over 65 are already at risk of becoming exactly this. A 2023 AARP report found over 12 million older Americans already aging alone. The population over 65 is expected to double by 2060, and the number of people arriving at old age without anyone is growing faster than any institutional response to it. The body data is blunt. Men who live alone have nearly double the mortality risk of men who live with others, not from any specific disease, but from the cumulative effect of no one noticing, no one intervening, and no one being there. Men who moved into living alone through divorce had a 34% higher mortality risk than men who stayed partnered. These are not lifestyle statistics. This is about survival. This isn't a uniquely American story. It is playing out across every English-speaking country simultaneously, largely in silence and mostly unaddressed. This is not said to terrify, but because the only way to change what winter looks like is to see it coming while there is still time to do something. Not healing, not hope, and not wellness. Infrastructure. Gen X men build things. They fix things before they break. They understand that a roof does not fail all at once. It fails because nobody fixed the small leak years ago, and eventually it is no longer a repair job. The framing that actually works here is not open up or find your tribe. It is fix the structure now before the structure collapses. He understands this logic and has applied it to everything in his life except the part that matters most right now. Get a dog. A dog mandates a daily routine, getting up, going outside, and moving every day regardless of how the day feels. For a man whose days have become structureless, that is not nothing. Dogs generate incidental social contact. Other dog owners are one of the few categories of adults who still talk to strangers, and those low-stakes conversations accumulate into something real over time. Furthermore, a dog provides something most of these men haven't had from another living thing in a long time: unconditional daily physical presence. No performance is required, And there is no vulnerability, just a living thing that is genuinely glad he exists every single day. For a man who has engineered his life to need nobody, that is the lowest barrier meaningful relationship available. It is a practical observation. Find one man and do one recurring thing. Not a group, not therapy, and not an app. Men do not connect through emotional disclosure. They connect through doing things alongside each other. So, find one man he actually respects, pick one activity, and put it on a recurring schedule. Fishing, chess, a weekly run, or fixing something in a garage. The content does not matter. The relationship builds in the silence around the activity over months, without either person having to name what is happening. This is how men have always built real friendships, and it still works. But someone has to initiate, and that should be him. Use skill-based volunteering, and this one is specific. Not charity in the generic sense, but deploying real professional expertise somewhere it is actually needed. If he can build things, look at Habitat for Humanity. If he has financial knowledge, look at financial literacy programs. If he has decades in an industry, look at mentoring programs for people starting where he was 30 years ago. The mechanism isn't altruism. It is being needed for who he actually is, rather than for what he can produce economically. A lot of these men have only ever been valued as output. In a context where genuine experience is what someone else needs, that reframe carries real weight. Establish one relationship with someone 20 years younger, a nephew, a mentee, or a neighbor's kid. This is not charity. It is structural. A person 20 years younger right now will be in their 50s when he is in his 70s, still functional, still present, and still capable of the practical things an older person can no longer do alone. Building that relationship now, slowly, creates a person in his life who is still there when he needs someone to be there. In return, the younger person gets something rare, a non-parental adult who has actually lived and will tell them the truth without trying to manage their choices. Both sides of that are real. Write the account, not a book, and not for publication, but a document. Record what happened, how it happened, what it cost, and what he would tell the 30-year-old version of himself. The point isn't the writing itself, it is what writing forces, looking at a life and finding its shape. Most men who do this discover that life was not what they thought. Things that felt like failure look different when written down, and periods that seemed like nothing were actually building something. Some of these documents become something beyond themselves, and all of them do something real for the man who writes them. Make the body non-negotiable, not for how it looks, but for how long it keeps working. Every year of physical capacity maintained is a year of not needing someone else to do something he used to do himself. The data on resistance training for men over 50 is clear. It slows cognitive decline, improves mood, and maintains the independence that determines whether he is running his own life or someone else is running it for him. For a Gen X man, physical strength is infrastructure. None of this fixes everything. These are structural moves that change what the next 20 years actually look like if started now. None of them require becoming a different person. They require showing up repeatedly to things that do not feel immediately rewarding, which is something he already knows how to do. He has been doing it his entire adult life. The question is whether he will do it for himself. Nobody is coming to fix this. The system that was supposed to catch him either failed quietly or was never as real as it appeared. The cultural contract was written by people who believed it, followed by people who trusted it, and broke down for reasons that had nothing to do with effort or character. He did the right things, but the instructions were wrong. Not because someone lied with bad intentions, but because the world those instructions were written for had already stopped existing before he finished learning them. The winter ahead is real. He hasn't imagined it. The silence around him confirms it, and the data confirms it. The worst thing he can do now is continue doing what he has done for 30 years, holding it together on the outside while not looking at what is actually happening. But the winter is not here yet, and what a man does in the years before it arrives is the only variable that is still in play. This is not because life owes him something this time, but just because there is still time to build something small and real, something that holds. A dog that is glad to see him, one man who shows up to the same thing every week, a younger person who picks up when he calls, a body that still works, and a document that says what the life actually was. He did everything right in a world that no longer exists. The question now is what he builds in the world that does. If this exploration of the silent struggles of a generation has changed how you view the world around you, please subscribe and like the channel. We are dedicated to uncovering the psychological truths and histories that have been buried or ignored. Let's work together to build a more resilient future. The next chapter of our investigation will open soon.